come out of our travel fund.
Oh.
Yeah, I was able to raise 25 extra bucks before we left.
Where did you get 25 extra bucks?
I sold some stuff to Billy and 4C.
The blind kid?
Yeah.
What did you sell him, Lloyd? What kind of stuff?
I don't know. A few baseball cards, a sack of marbles. Petey.
Petey? You sold my dead bird to a blind kid?
Lloyd, what do you... Petey didn't even have a head.
Harry, I took care of it.
Pretty bird. Yeah, can you say pretty bird? Pretty bird. Yes, pretty bird. Pretty bird. Polly, want a cracker?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for clicking. Since my last patch video, I've been thinking about how best to showcase recent pet changes, and this video is the result. A lot of work went into this one, as you'll see in just a minute, but since it took me so long to complete, quite a few updates have dropped in the meantime. So, this is going to be a big old catch-up video covering changes from patch 3.10.1 all the way to the most current version as of the making of this video, patch 3.13.1. Because there's just so much to review, please feel free to use the timestamps down below in the description to jump around to any parts you're particularly interested in. That said, this video will have a special focus on the first bird pet and the final pet of the bi-yearly cycle, Elektra. On top of that, I was able to chat with PapaKicks about the launch of Hunt Royale's brand new server setup and what that brings to the table for both players and the dev team. There's a ton of information to go over here, so let's kick things off by checking out our monthly pet and what it brings to the game. Elektra is Hunt Royale's first pet from the bird family and comes with a base damage profile of 60% of your hunter's damage while attacking at 90% of your hunter's attack speed. Elektra's special attack is Ricochet Shot that allows its damage to bounce to one additional target as long as that target is within melee distance of the original target. Normally, pets will attack the closest enemy within their aura range, but with Elektra's Ricochet, it has the potential to reach enemies just outside of the usual range by chaining a hit off of a nearby target. Now, it is a subtle but interesting mechanic that gives Elektra a little bit extra extended reach. Elektra's unique aura is called the Aura of the Talon. Hunters affected by this aura will have their damage increased by 20%. If you attack from range while standing inside Elektra's aura and move outside of it before the projectile lands, the bonus won't be applied. But the inverse is also true. If you attack while outside of the aura and then move into it before the attack connects, it will get the bonus. The bonus damage affects the same types of damage that other generic damage bonuses do, basically your hunter's white damage, not things like elemental damage. That said, because elemental effects like fire or poison ticks are based off of your hunter's damage, this aura increases that base damage, which does make it have an indirect bonus. And real quick, while we're on the topic of auras, I just want to sneak in some findings from testing I did for my last patch review video. While pet auras currently say they only affect hunters, I found that they actually affect the pets themselves as well. Now, I'd share all the data, but honestly, this video is going to end up being pretty hefty as is, so I'm just going to spare you guys the deep dive for what ends up being a not so noticeable bonus that we're all quietly enjoying. It's kind of just a trust me bro moment. I did bring it up with Core, and we both agreed it was a happy little accident, so since all the pets seem to benefit from their own auras, the plan is to just leave it as is as a quality of life perk, and update the descriptions to reflect that.
And there was much rejoicing.
But while that's all well and good, Elektra decided to be unique and not benefit from its own damage aura, either directly or indirectly. So, way to go, Elektra, just way to go. Make this confusing. To break it down real quick, the damage a pet deals is based on your hunter's base damage, which we know. That means that Elektra takes its percentage of your hunter's damage before any modifiers are applied, including its own bonus damage aura. And on top of that, the damage Elektra does end up hitting for doesn't benefit from its own aura, the way other pets benefit from their own auras. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Switching over to talents, the first tier of the bird family talent tree includes Go for the Eyes and Out of the Blue. Go for the Eyes provides a bonus similar to Elektra's aura, increasing your hunter's damage by a percentage. Each talent point adds 0.5%, so with all 10 talent points invested, you're looking at a 5% hunter damage boost. And if your pet is fully fed, you'll get 2 extra talent points, bringing the total bonus up to 6% bonus damage. The other talent out of the blue is a little odd. It decreases the refill time, or cooldown, before you receive any new play tokens. At first glance, it looks like it gives a 1% reduction per talent point, but the actual increase scales higher the more points you invest. So here's what I mean. After spending your first 2 points, the third point you would spend will give a bonus of 2% instead of the expected 1. It happens again when going from 6 to 7 points, bumping the bonus to 2.5%. If your bird is fed, the extra 2 talent points it gets will also grant 2.5% each, capping the talent at 25% reduction in token regeneration time. But what exactly are tokens? Well, those are the depletable resources used to progress through your seasonal and dungeon tracks. Boosters can double your reward payouts, but the only way to get more tokens is time gated. You either have to wait a couple of hours for the next batch to roll in, or watch an ad once a day for an instant refill. You can't buy them. So reducing the wait time by a quarter is actually a pretty solid benefit. Let's take a quick look at Elektra's damage profile and how it stacks up against the other pets released so far. So something I just keep forgetting no matter how many times Core's reminded me about it, is that there's an affection bonus to a pet's damage stat. When your pet's affection bar is maxed out, they get a permanent plus 20% damage boost, which is now actually shown in-game on their damage stat card thanks to the recent patch. So along with gaining plus 2 talent points per talent in your pet's family tree when affection is maxed out, your pet will also get its extra 20% damage added onto its base value. Now, since every pet will benefit from this plus 20% bonus once their affection is completed, it doesn't change their relative rankings, but it's nice to know they'll be hitting a little bit harder when you get them maxed out. With 60% damage and 90% attack speed, Elektra will deal about 54% of your hunter's DPS. That puts Elektra around the middle of the pack when compared to other Phase 1 pets, but as usual, the conversation doesn't stop there, as this is where special attacks come into play. Canine, for example, has his ramping damage effect, and Rodent adds bonus earth damage with each hit, which bumps up both of their DPS. Elektra's special, on the other hand, is super straightforward. It's binary. On one hand, if it's only hitting one target, you're looking at the normal 54% of your hunter's DPS like we talked about, but if it does manage to ricochet a second target, Elektra's DPS is now effectively doubled, reaching 108%. And then, of course, you can tack on the 20% affection bonus we were just talking about for all the pets across the board. Now, this is usually the point in the video where I try to fold in the other pets and their special attacks and account for all the added DPS they can do. And since a lot of that DPS comes from their stacking debuffs, which aren't exactly easy to quantify, I normally switch into a quote-unquote try mode run and do some hands-on testing to see how they actually perform. But with that said, when I had to sit down and start testing all of this stuff, I knew that there was a wave of pet changes on the horizon, and for some reason, my Elektra's pet aura wasn't working properly for me in try mode until the server swap was completed. So I just figured it was finally time to change up how I approach these tests, and honestly, it's something I've been meaning to do for a while anyways, so here we go. So I decided to create some Excel calculators to help me settle which aura is best. An innocent enough idea that quickly ate up the last few weeks worth of my free time, hence the tardiness of this video. But I started off by comparing the Dragon's Burn aura directly to Elektra's new damage aura. The idea was simple. If I assembled some basic information and assumed all stats between two different hunters were identical, excluding their aura selections, I could project what a hunter's DPS might look like with each aura for a single second, a snapshot basically. Since you can change variables like base damage, stack amounts, elemental modifiers, resistances, and even things like multi-shots or tentacles, you're able to build your own custom scenarios to test. I designed this calculator to be easy enough to follow along visually, mostly reading from left to right as you follow the progression of the equation. It breaks things down into key parts of the damage calculation, like burn damage, explosion damage, your hunter's white damage, tentacle procs, and your hits per second. Then, at the bottom, it pulls all of those results together and applies the burn resistance to give us our final projected DPS. With those final values, we can directly compare which aura, if all things are exactly equal, would result in higher DPS for any given setup we plug in. And by displaying the percentage difference between the two, we get a nice simple answer to the big question: which one is better? Once I had the burn test complete, I followed suit with poison, earth, and hit point calculators so they could all be compared against the new damage aura as well. I made some minor tweaks to each one, so for example, the poison test didn't need explosion damage obviously. Earth damage resistances were now able to go into the negatives, allowing for massive earth damage boosts, and the health aura test included health and hit points to damage modifiers to properly factor in the damage that it brings to the table. Now I get it, looking at these calculators can be a bit much, so I made some handy little control blocks for each test. These let you easily manage all the variables I mentioned earlier, like hunter damage, stack amounts, and elemental resistance, yada yada. Just type in a new value into one of these boxes and you'll see the calculations update in real time. So that's cool and all, but obviously we're missing one big aura from the pool: attack speed. And I'll be honest, I really didn't want to mess around with attack speed at first, but the more I looked at everything, the more I realized what was the point of building all of this if I wasn't going to factor in how attack speed affected these results but over time. So admittedly, I begrudgingly made a new calculator. The key idea with this one was that instead of creating a single snapshot in time, I'd build something that could simulate damage done over a set period. Basically a test that could represent attack speed in action. Now, just like before, the tests assume all the stats between the two hunters are exactly the same, and the only differentiator between the two is which aura is active on them. Most of these calculations stayed exactly the same, but now I had to factor in attack speed, meaning more attacks per second, which leads to more multi-shots, more tentacles, and more stacks getting applied to the target. To keep it all organized, I set up another final DPS section towards the bottom that pulls together every damage source and gives a clean DPS total, along with the percent difference between the two auras. This time, however, I extended the simulation out over 20 seconds of combat, updating the stat counts on the target as the time passes. Once I finished the setup for the burn test, I replicated the structure for poison, earth, and health auras, tweaking them as needed. Earth and health, in particular, required special handling since they don't add stack damage over time. Instead, I just summed all of their damage over the course of 20 seconds in a window to get a clear comparison. And again, since the raw data can be a bit much to look at, I built new control blocks for these as well, adding in all the new variables and modifiers. I also trimmed down the 20 separate results to just 5 key time intervals, so you can quickly see how DPS changes throughout the fight. And while I was putting the finishing touches on these calculations, I was once again hit with a terribly unwelcome thought. Yeah, it's interesting to see these projected results of two auras going head to head, whether it's a snapshot of a single second or the full 20 seconds of combat. But when people ask which pet is best, I don't think they're just asking about raw numbers or just solo pets. I think what they're actually wanting to know is, what pet should I use alongside my partner's pet? Which two auras should I be using on my team? So I grabbed a healthy bag of chocolates and went to my room and cried myself to sleep. And I'm not afraid to admit it, okay? You'd cry too if you suddenly realized you had to redo everything from scratch again, with even more complexity laid on top. Knowing that if it worked, it would basically make your previous calculators obsolete, effectively wasting the last 2 weeks of your life. But I digress. The next morning, I was fine. I got over it. So I went ahead and I made a final round of calculators, for now. I actually liked how they turned out, so I decided I was going to import them to Google Sheets and make them available for anybody. So if you guys want to mess around with this stuff, you definitely can. The link is down in the description. When you load it up, you're going to be met with this cover sheet that'll explain everything you need to know to get started, including a request that you make a copy of the sheet for yourself, as I only gave everyone view-only access by default so that you don't kind of like mess around with other people while they're trying to like work on it. So as soon as you get your hands on it, just make a copy of it, download it, do whatever you want with it. As for the calculators themselves, let's walk through what's going on here so you know what to do. This test was designed to figure out which combination of hunter auras performs best in a given scenario. The first calculator deals with a quote-unquote fire map type situation, where players would typically consider the map most optimal to clear using a fire build. So the question then becomes, what aura should player 1 bring, and what aura should player 2 bring? For me, the top contenders in my head were Water Cat's attack speed aura, Serpent Dragon's fire aura, and Elektra's damage aura. I made 3 different team combinations using these auras as my test subjects. Now, a quick clarification, even though the goal here is to test the team's combined power, this calculator doesn't simulate 2 hunters worth of damage. Instead, it calculates 1 hunter's DPS while benefiting from 2 auras at the same time. This simulates an in-game situation where a support hunter is typically stacking on a boss, and then backs off letting the damage dealer take over and go to work while having 2 active auras. And another quick disclaimer, these calculators aren't meant to act as full-fledged damage simulations that mirror in-game results down to the decimal. They're simplified on purpose. There are a lot of in-game modifiers we're leaving out on purpose, like hunter perks, boss debuffs, and so on. The goal is to isolate the value of each aura. Every hunter in these tests has identical stats. Same damage, same gear, same setup. The only variable changing between the 2 teams is which auras they're currently using. At the top of this window, we've got the 3.0 version of my control blocks under the quick results section, which I'm going to circle back to in just a moment. Scrolling down to the calculations section, we have our conveyor belt of assembled data, laid out in a way that hopefully lets you follow along with the stats we're collecting and how those results are being assembled. Scrolling down even further, we hit the improved auras over time section, which now calculates damage over a full 60 seconds instead of just the 20. I figured standing still and whacking on a boss for a full minute should be more than enough time to capture any key breakpoints and give you more flexibility in your testing. So you can now check your results at, say, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, or whatever makes sense to what you're trying to test. Now, heading back up to the quick results section, I'll show you how it all works and highlight some of the key variables you might want to mess with. So first up, we have hunter damage. This just represents how hard your hunter is hitting the target. Adjusting this can shift your hunter's role from a heavy hitter to a more meager stacking setup, or even mimic a low-level hunter altogether. The multi-shot value here represents how many perks you have, or any extra projectiles gained from armor enchantments. This then gets added to your single base attack down below. Tentacle % chance refers to the value granted by your blue power stones equipped in offensive armor slots. A value of 200%, for example, means each projectile that hits a target will spawn 2 tentacles. As a reminder, tentacles were reworked last year to reduce how many actually appeared on screen. Instead, the ones that do appear now have a built-in multi-shot effect to represent the damage from any hidden tentacles. This way, the total damage output stays the same, but behind the scenes, the game isn't overloaded with hundreds of visible tentacles, keeping things a little bit more manageable in the interest of making things run smoother. For base attacks per second, this one is a bit of a toss-up for you to decide. Hunter's base attack speed is mostly the same across hunters, but attack animations really vary everyone's final attacks per second, but much more on that in a little bit. For me, I typically just use 3 attacks per second as a base here. Attack speed from gear is pretty straightforward. A level 10 set of Titan gear gives 150% attack speed by default, but you can bump this up if you've leveled past level 10, or lower it if you're still missing some pieces. Number of equipped attack speed perks just means how many increments of plus 20% attack speed would you like these hunters to have during this test. The stack starting point lets you mimic the scenario where a support hunter has been stacking a boss for you, and once they pull off, how many stacks are actually on the target when you begin your damage phase. You could also set this to 0 if you wanted to see how quickly you can ramp up your damage from scratch. The equipped burn % references the red power stones equipped in your offensive armor slots. As a reminder, 5 level 7 stones will provide 1250% burn effect, which is pretty much the standard use. Lastly, we have resistance. If your damage calculations are out of control and seem absurdly high, it might be due to the lack of resistances being used. From all the testing I've done with all these calculators, the resistance amount really does make the largest difference between tests. The other calculators have pretty similar variables to tweak, but I do want to quickly touch on the hit points to damage variables. The flat hit points bonuses variable refers to any starting perks you might have equipped, any clan perks, guild bonuses, green defensive gems, and so on. Basically, anything your hunter starts with that isn't a % based modifier. This matters because if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a mini health scaling chart. It takes your hunter's base starting health at level 1 before any modifiers, and scales it up by the standard 10% per level all the way to level 20. The new health value is then used to calculate your hit point to damage bonus. And speaking of which, you can enter any hit points to damage value to match whatever perks or gear enchantments that you want your hunter to be using during this test. And the last variable to go over here is the player hit point factor. Now, I've always thought of this as the health resistance effect that was added in Fractured Sanctum. It's not really a resistance though, it's more of a hard cap. So, for example, if a floor has a 49% factor, like level 1 of Fractured Sanctum, your health isn't being reduced by 49%, it's being set to 49% of what it should normally be. So, a little different. Now that should be enough to get you started running some of these tests, but I'm sure you're probably asking yourself, what is that block that I keep seeing on all these calculators and what does it do? So that is the attack speed soft cap block. When you run your own tests, or maybe if you've been paying attention to some of these results I've been showing along the way, you may have realized that the attack speed stat is a pretty dominant stat, and that the cat's aura tends to top the charts regardless of what test it's in. It's a pretty typical DPS trope, right? Like, the faster you hit, typically the less damage you do per hit, and the harder you hit, the slower your attacks will tend to be, resulting in a somewhat similar DPS between the two styles. The key is striking a balance between raw damage and attack speed. If you're already hitting really hard, you'd gain more damage by adding more attack speed instead of just adding more raw damage. In Hunt Royale, we all pretty much experience that same exact situation, where hunters hit really hard thanks to this high level gear that we have, strong power stones, and even our awakening 2s. So speeding up those already strong hits is actually generally the best way to boost your DPS. But here's the catch. There's a bit of a problem with how Hunt Royale handles really high amounts of attack speed. So let me explain. Each hunter in the game has their own unique attack animation, which means each hunter will interact with attack speed a little bit differently. If you were to take a ranged hunter and watch them attack closely, you'll see them fire off a shot, pause for a beat, and then start their next attack animation before firing off another shot. Attack speed shortens this whole cycle, shrinking both the pause and speeding up the animation. The issue at hand is a bit tricky to explain, so I'm going to do my best to show you a possible explanation of what's happening. So since attack speed increases our hunter's attacks per second, let's take a closer look at what's happening inside of 1 second by switching to a bird's eye view of our 1 second container here. Normally, when our hunters attack, two things happen at once. Damage is dealt, and the attack animation plays through one full cycle. These two variables are tied together. One cannot move on until the other one finishes. They have to execute simultaneously as a single unit. If our hunter attacks 3 times a second, let's say, this is how things would line up inside of that 1 second. Everything fits nicely. The issue we're talking about shows up when your attack speed gets so high that it tries to fire off attacks faster than the animation can actually keep up with. Once scaled, if we were to assemble only our attacks into this 1 second time frame, they all line up perfectly and fit with no issues. However, since these values are inseparable, the animations must fit as well, and because they haven't scaled evenly, now they don't. No one knows exactly what's going on under the hood here, but the general consensus is that while attack speed does scale both your attacks per second and your animation speed, it seems to scale animations at a reduced or at least inconsistent rate. This causes attacks to fall out of sync with their animations, causing attacks to have to wait around, so to speak, for animations to finish up. So when you assemble the attack and its animation within the 1 second, some attacks cannot fit or complete within the confines of that 1 second, causing them to become clipped. It's at this point your hunter starts to experience dropped attacks. Since animations must complete and an attack cannot go through until a previous animation has finished its cycle, any additional attacks you should be able to complete are lost, effectively removing any value additional attack speed can offer. So, if your hunter has a longer or clunkier animation than others, they'll experience clipping attacks sooner, meaning their effective attack speed cap is lower and can get hit earlier. In other words, there's an attack speed soft cap in Hunt Royale. Once you hit it, adding more attack speed no longer increases your attacks per second, it just sort of becomes a dead stat.
How do you like that, little pussy?
And at that stage, stacking more of it over other perks comes with a really steep opportunity cost. And here's a little excerpt from PapaKicks explaining his take on the attack speed bug in-game. And here's another example I'd like to share from MrMoogle, where he talks about the old Mech Assassin bug, back when stacking too much attack speed actually made the hunter attack slower. But that bug has since been fixed, so don't worry about that, but the point still remains. In some extreme cases, taking too much attack speed will no longer just have an opportunity cost, but it'll actively work against you and be a detriment to your hunter. So then, what's the soft cap for attack speed? Well, as I mentioned earlier, every hunter is different, and they each interact with attack speed in their own unique way. So the truth is, no one really knows what the exact thresholds are. This has been an issue since the early days of Hunt Royale, but it's only recently become a common problem. And this is because it's much easier than it ever has been to stack large amounts of attack speed, thanks to Titan gear, awakening perks, buffs, and especially from the cat's talent and aura buffs. So it seems MrMoogle had enough of that and stepped up to figure things out. A couple months ago, he created a discussion thread on Discord to break down the issue and organize a community effort to systematically test every hunter's attack speed behavior in the game. It's a ton of tedious work, and progress has slowed a bit due to testing hurdles, but if you'd like the help, you can reach out to him through this Discord thread, and he'll get you access to his testing calculator. So far, he shared some graphs that really highlight how weird things can get with high attack speed. In this example, he charts Jester's attacks per second. The red line shows the expected scaling, how attack speed should behave, and then the blue line actually shows what happens. You can see that Jester's attack rate scales normally up to around the 250% bonus attack speed mark, then it just flatlines for a while, before it suddenly jumps up again around the 500% mark. Here's another example, this time with Ninja. His attacks per second scale normally until about 200% bonus attack speed, and then just spikes upwards at 350%, but only to plateau out again. Now take a look at this test with Huntalisk, which showcases an example of excessive attack speed actively working against you and causing you to lose DPS rather than it having leveled off. Huntalisk's attack rate climbs until around the 200% mark, where it caps out at about 5 attacks per second. At 300% attack speed, it jumps up to 6 attacks per second. But then at 400% attack speed, it plummets all the way back down to 4 attacks per second. The last chart MrMoogle shared happened to be one utilizing the cat's aura, and as you can see both with and without the aura, the results just level off, only to jump up randomly at new attack speed thresholds. Another wild card to throw into the mix is battery saver mode, which may also affect how many attacks your hunter can output per second. Turning it off seems to have a direct correlation, possibly due to allowing the game to use more of the phone's processing power, but that's just a complete guess on my part. Although far from completing this attack speed project, as it does seem to have slowed down a bit, MrMoogle does say that a good rule of thumb to keep in the back of your head is that most hunters seemingly break at around 200 to 300% bonus attack speed, with some outliers taking even longer. Let's go back to our suitcase analogy for a second so we can visualize how these breakpoints work. In our example, as we stack more attack speed, we should be seeing an increase to our attacks per second, but since we're animation locked, things stay flat. It's as if we're gaining no attack speed whatsoever. That is, until we hit one of the breakpoints shown on MrMoogle's charts. That's when our attacks per second suddenly jump. But why? Well, because the attack animation has finally scaled down enough to fit an additional attack within our 1 second window, allowing one more full attack cycle to go through and increasing our attacks per second value by 1. One possible solution PapaKicks is looking into is the idea of splitting the connection between attacks per second and the attack animation once a certain attack speed threshold is reached. This will let attacks fire on their own, no longer being held captive by the animation, and ensuring every attack gets counted. The animation, on the other hand, could still play out, but at such a fast pace with so much going on, the player probably wouldn't even notice the separation. That said, the team would need to handle this on a per hunter basis, so if it does happen, it'll definitely take some time to complete. I bring all this up for 2 reasons. First, I wanted to showcase the hard work MrMoogle's done for the community, and maybe even encourage a few people to lend him a hand. Second, I wanted to explain what the actual problem is with attack speed, why it's not always as strong as it looks on paper, and how it can be difficult or impossible to actually account for it. Now that we've gone over all the context, I can explain to you how this calculator actually works and why you might want to use it in your own tests. What it does is pretty simple. It lets you set a custom soft cap for attack speed, and then any bonus attack speed beyond that point will get scaled down using a curve to simulate diminishing returns. You can also adjust how aggressive that curve is by using the diminishing returns harshness factor. After some testing, I found that a value of 1 felt a little too lenient, while 2 is a little bit too harsh, so 1.5 somewhere in the middle seems pretty good. So why use a diminishing return curve instead of just hard capping the attack speed in this calculator? Well, as we saw from MrMoogle's data, attack speed behavior isn't flat, it levels off, jumps around unexpectedly, and can even drop at certain breakpoints. Using a curve gives us a way to account for some of those irregularities and differences across hunters without needing perfect data for each one. It's not a perfect solution and definitely will not give you exact results. It's simply a better than nothing approach that represents the inefficiency that comes with too much attack speed. Looking at some of these final attack speed values here in my tests, it's pretty obvious your hunter is not going to be getting full use of these attack speed values past a certain point. So the idea was that any kind of a realistic adjustment would be more accurate than pretending that all of this attack speed will be getting used in your calculations. And sure enough, if we give this thing a try by clicking on this checkbox to turn it on, and we see that the cat's aura's effectiveness plummets, going from arguably the best aura to possibly the worst. Now obviously that depends on the amount of attack speed that you're bringing into a round. If you're a low level hunter and you just don't have endgame gear, yeah, attack speed's still going to be really good for you. But feel free to mess around with this calculator yourself and set up your own tests and scenarios. If you find any issues, bugs, or just outright wrong calculations in the sheet, which, let's face it, you're probably going to find issues, please feel free to hit me up here on YouTube, or you can message me on Discord, and I'll do my best to get the sheet updated as quickly as I can. So then, what are my final thoughts on Elektra? Honestly, I'm a fan. The bonus damage is pretty solid, but it really shines when it's paired with an additional aura from your partner. For solo play, it might still be more efficient to just stick with a pet that matches your chosen element, but I have to say, I'm genuinely enjoying Elektra's Ricochet special attack, which is surprising. I thought it would be pretty minor and not really relevant, but it's actually been really helpful during farming runs. It does a good job at clearing out trash mobs while leveling, keeping the area around crystals clear, and maintaining fire lanes during boss fights. And when I switch to a different pet, I do feel the difference. Even if it's subtle, the drop in clearing potential is there. So for now, Elektra has earned the slot in my farming loadout, and I've been pretty happy with the results. And that wraps up this deep dive on the final pet from the first cycle of pet releases. Now let's shift gears and dive into all these patch notes that I need to catch up on. This video took so long to get together, Boombit released like 3 full patches in the meantime, and there's a bunch of stuff to discuss too, so let's just get right to it. Starting with patch 3.11's notes, pet aura descriptions can now be clicked on and read before level 10 when the aura is still locked. Now when a pet is released, we can read all about what we're getting before we even max it out. We now have a universal core counter in the Hunters tab, so we can quickly see how many we have to work with instead of digging around in a Hunter's Awakening 2 menu. Custom skins will no longer provide the +1 damage bonus, and honestly when I first read this I thought they were just getting rid of the +1 damage from skins altogether, but no, it's just the custom skins that you can pay Boombit to create for you or your clan. Now these are pretty expensive to have made, but you can obtain them every once in a while via giveaways that clans will host every once in a while. And lastly, the big one for this patch, Firefluff got a bit of a rework to how his stacking demons work, giving him an overall buff to DPS. To start, Firefluff's passive was changed to remove the interaction between demon pack perks and spawning additional demons per perk selected. His first awakening also had the demon pack portion removed, which meant that Firefluff would no longer take a health penalty when selecting demon pack perks, but that doesn't matter anyways, as the other change was that demon pack itself was removed from Firefluff's kit entirely. To compensate, a bonus of +2 demons was added to all 3 of Firefluff's unique perks. Before this change, you had to choose between demon pack perks to get more demons, or the unique perks themselves, which didn't come with a boost to demons at all. This meant that most builds had lower demon totals than what players wanted. These changes remove that trade-off, letting you fully invest in the powerful unique perks that Firefluff has, while still also gaining extra demons each perk. And speaking of those demons, the perk Fire Demons Awakens got a direct buff to the % damage bonus demons deal, going from 75% all the way up to 125% per perk selected. This helps offset the damage loss you might feel if you were someone that used to invest in demon packs for its raw damage. So yeah, your demons hit harder and you can spawn way more now, so nice little update. Moving on to the next patch, 3.12.0, which was solely focused on delivering the new server changes. I had a chance to ask PapaKicks a few follow-up questions to expand on what Gamu initially shared back in May about this server swap, what it actually is, and what it accomplishes. My first question was simple. What exactly is a server switch, and what does this quote-unquote new server technology really mean? For security reasons, and to avoid handing over the keys to the kingdom, PapaKicks explained that the change involves moving from one hosting provider, such as Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, to another one. This shift improves back-end infrastructure and overall game security. Now, not to say that players were ever at risk, but it does mean stronger firewalls and better defenses against, let's say, less than honest players.
No way. I'm getting hacked.
Oporsky?
No, this is major.
Yeah, we'll go with that. One of the first player-facing benefits is the return of leaderboards. These were disabled each season due to an overwhelming number of bad actors. Before the boards were taken down, spammers had essentially taken it over, and in some cases, 125 out of the top 200 slots were all fake accounts, promoting things like account boosting, resource selling, or even hacking services. And ironically, yes, they were even actively competing against one another to climb ranks for visibility. So it became a Hydra type situation. Remove one account and then two more would pop up in its place. So Boombit had to pull the plug and work on a more permanent fix, and that's what this server switch helps provide. I also asked about the new player IDs, because at first I thought maybe they were expanding the ID system for future growth or better account tracking, but the truth is simpler. The new system just comes with new IDs, so there's nothing more to it. Now, about that mailbox reset. This change forced everyone to clear out their stockpiled rewards. PapaKicks explained that the mailbox data was stored server-side, not on your account, and couldn't be carried over to a new provider without a significant investment of time to build and test a migration tool. Rather than sink resources into that, the team just chose to focus on new content instead, so a clean slate was an easier option. But was that the only reason? In a past video, I speculated that this might actually have been an intentional opportunity to wipe old clan chests before changing the rewards. If Boombit updated these rewards, like adding Hunter Cubes or Fractured Sanctum Gems, players with large stockpiles could flood their accounts with new resources all at once. So I asked PapaKicks, and he cleared that up immediately.
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
He said while clan boss rewards are dynamic and technically could have supported my theory, clan chests on the other hand are not. They're locked in with the rewards based on the rank they were created at, a system PapaKicks himself pushed for to prevent exactly this type of thing. So in short, the mailbox reset was purely due to the server migration. And the last two questions, I asked if the newly announced loyalty system was tied to this server update. And the answer? No. The loyalty system could have launched on the old setup, it's completely unrelated to the backend change and could have been deployed if it was ready. And finally, something I've been curious about since I started playing Hunt Royale, what about a Steam release? This has been a long requested feature by players who want a stable PC version without needing to have to go through an emulator. Even the devs and Cordian, the creator of Hunt Royale, have expressed interest in this in the past. PapaKicks says that moving to a unified login system lets you use your profile across phones, tablets, and emulators, which is definitely a step in the right direction for laying the groundwork for something like a Steam port. Now, a Steam release is technically still on the table, just at the very, very far end, because it's just not a priority right now. But he did let me know something interesting. The engine used to develop Hunt Royale actually works pretty seamlessly with Steam, so maybe with enough interest, if it picks back up, who knows? Maybe it could become a real possibility down the road. So, we'll see. Finishing up our patch review with the latest update, patch 3.13.0, this patch brings some pretty significant changes, starting with the hardcore co-op rework. This mode got a bunch of updates, including a very noticeable addition: towers to help defend the king. These towers are automatically placed when you purchase one at the new towers platform, and will upgrade through fire damage, frozen damage, and finally piercing damage as you level them up. There are also quality of life improvements like team level upgrades, so when one of you pays to level up, your partner will level up too. They also got rid of the more gold platform, instead boosting the amount of gold that you earn passively by 10%, allowing players to have more fun options to spend their gold on. Plus, the AI for the king got smarter too, so he won't be so aggressive, putting himself in harm's way for the fun of it.
I'm invincible! You're a loony.
Overall, the mode feels much more fun now in my opinion. It really makes me wonder what this could look like if the team went all in on an actual tower defense game mode. Imagine bringing a small group of hunters, assigning them to different roles. Like, maybe if you assigned a hunter to a tower, it could buff the tower's attack, adding unique effects in line with the hunter's own abilities. I mean, I'm getting a little off track here and I won't dive any deeper into it, but yeah, maybe these towers are just a fun first experimental step that could possibly evolve into a new game mode, but we'll see. And real quick before I switch topics, I heard a rumor that a certain content creator might be coming out of retirement to release a new video guide on this game mode, so guess we'll have to wait and see if the murmurings are true. No pressure. The next big change is the newly introduced loyalty system, which the developers gave us a first look at last month. It comes in the form of the new Hunters Guild and its treasury. As players, we prove our loyalty to the guild, earning trust with each loyalty level gained. Hitting new levels unlocks passive bonuses and opens up new goodies to purchase in the guild's treasury via the guild shop. This shop offers a wide variety of Hunt Royale rewards at a pretty hefty discount, a nice perk that reflects our standing with the guild. You'll be increasing your standing by completing new daily quests, which are similar to the season and dungeon pass quest tracks, plus a consecutive daily login tracker that rewards bonus guild XP the more days in a row that you log in. Now normally, I dive into all these rewards and benefits here, breaking everything down, but let's be honest, this video is a little on the long side. So luckily, a fellow content creator named Coffin Crash has already put together a quick review of all the rewards that you can expect to unlock. If you want to see more detail, I'd highly recommend checking out his video, which I'll have a link to in the description down below. The last major update in this patch is the revamped clan chest. These can now level all the way up to level 50, scaling rewards and adding new ones along the way. Here's a look at our clan's first level 50 chest rewards if you want to see what kind of loot you could be getting weekly. Now if your clan isn't quite capable of hitting level 50 each weekend, here's a full spreadsheet showing all the breakdowns of all the rewards that you can get. Finally, Abyssal Dark Forest will drop Earth and Undead Stones, providing a consistent alternative way to farming those unique Power Stones. To balance this larger stone pool out though, the overall stone drop rate was slightly increased, so the players can still reliably farm other stones as well. The cap on tickets you can redeem in one sitting for daily activities has finally been doubled. You can now blow through 20 tickets in a single event, effectively cutting your farming time for these modes in half. The pet UI clearly shows the bonus 20% affection damage boost you get when your pet hits max affection. Like I mentioned earlier, this bonus has actually always been in the game, but it's often been overlooked since it wasn't shown anywhere in game. Now there's a handy green modifier on each pet stat card to make it obvious, so I'll never forget again. Sweet. And while we're still on the topic of pets, this patch also brings the community requested green indicator dot that reminds you when your pets are ready to be fed. You can find the new dot on your pet tab under your gear icon window. And lastly for pets, now would be a good time to cover all the pet changes that have been happening both in this patch and patch 3.10.1 that I have conveniently omitted covering thus far. So probably the most impactful change made for pets was that hunters can no longer be under the effect of two identical pet auras at the same time. This change was the catalyst for me making that third spreadsheet, as it imposed an important question. Which two auras should you be using? Well, hopefully we have a better idea of that answer now. Other pet changes were some nice buffs to auras in general. Watercat's attack speed aura went from 30% to 40%, Boris's poison aura jumped from 40% all the way up to 60%, and this patch buffs Cerberus's health aura from 15% to 20%. Also, the aura bug fix from patch 3.9.0, which was introduced alongside Fractured Sanctum, has now been reverted. For those unaware and who probably are wondering why Peanut felt a little gimp the last couple of months, it's because Peanut's talents and aura were originally designed and supposed to increase the effectiveness of equipped earth damage that your hunter does, not actually add earth damage to their attacks. It was a bug that was corrected, but left players wanting it to go back to the way it was, as earth damage in general is a somewhat difficult element to obtain. To put this bug into perspective, with Peanut's aura and talent active, your hunters were getting a total of 50% earth damage just by having the squirrel pet out. To match that same effect without Peanut, you'd have to equip 2 level 7 and 1 level 5 earth stones. And like we mentioned, you could previously double dip on auras, so if your partner brought a Peanut as well, that would push the bonus up to 80%, which would be equivalent to 4 level 7 earth stones. Because players really liked having that on-demand earth damage from Peanut, Quar decided to give everyone the best of both worlds. He reverted the aura change, so now it once again adds earth damage to hunters. But to prevent the talent from passively giving earth damage whenever Peanut wasn't present, the talent remains a bonus that multiplies your existing earth damage. So in other words, the aura will add earth damage to your hunter, and the talent will boost the amount of earth damage that you already have, a multiplier. And just a heads up, all these pet changes are reflected in my aura spreadsheet, so no worries there. Moving on from pets, Spider Queen's Awakening 2 got a slight rework that keeps the same theme, but makes her easier to play. Before, for every spider on the battlefield, all spiders' damage would be increased by 2%. The idea was to stand at max distance, stack up high amounts of attack speed and multi-shots, and pump out as many spiders as possible, all while actively avoiding any fast spiders' unique perks. Those perks actually sped up the movement of the spiders, causing them to reach their target faster, detonate, and then leave the battlefield early, which would lower the damage bonus for all other remaining spiders. Now, the Awakening 2 calculates the spider damage bonus based on the number of spiders spawned over the last second, with that bonus increasing as you pick more perks. The playstyle stays the same, trying to spawn as many spiders as you can, but since you probably won't be able to spawn as many spiders in that small window compared to how it was before, and also just to give Spider Queen a little bit of a boost, the damage bonus per spider was bumped up by 3%, for a total of 5% bonus damage per perk to balance it all out. While there are a bunch more bug fixes in this patch to go over, I think this video's got to end for both of our sakes. If you managed to stick with me this far, A, I hope you're still awake, and B, I really hope it was worth your time and you learned some useful info from it. This video was an absolute beast to get made, so I do appreciate you sticking with me one way or another. If you would like to support me in my efforts further, you can use code VIGO in game. Thank you very much as always if you've redeemed it at some point. Again, I do know that there's a lot of codes out there to choose from, so it means a lot when I see some people using mine. I appreciate you guys. Until the next one, good luck and happy hunting.